My mother didn't hesitate. The moment I said no to handing over my car, no to giving my credit card to my half-sister, she lifted the pot from the stove and threw it straight at my face. The burn was instant, but the look in her eyes hurt more than the pain. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I picked up my bag and walked out. Hours later, when they unlocked the door, the house was empty, and a man in a suit was already waiting for them. Before I tell you everything, do me a small favor, take a second to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It helps stories like mine reach people who might need them more than they realize. My name is Lucas Reed, and until that morning, I still believed family meant something unbreakable. The kitchen in Clearview Hills always smelled the same at dawn: overbrewed coffee, cleaning spray, and whatever Evelyn decided to cook to remind everyone who controlled the house. That morning it was soup. A thick, simmering pot on the stove, steam fogging the windows even though the Arizona sun was already pressing against the glass. I stood at the counter scrolling through my phone, checking inventory numbers for Reed and Stone Market. I'd built the tracking system myself after my father died, taught myself enough code to keep the business from sinking when creditors circled. The numbers looked steady. Not spectacular, but honest. That mattered to me. Behind me, Bianca's laughter echoed from the hallway. She'd come home late the night before, heels kicked off near the door, her designer bag tossed onto a chair like furniture was optional in a house that bent to her presence. Bianca never cooked, never cleaned, never paid a bill. She didn't have to. She had Evelyn. "Lucas," my mother said sharply, not looking at me. "We need to talk." That phrase always meant the same thing. Not a conversation. A demand. She turned, ladle in hand, eyes sharp and already decided. "Bianca needs your car today. She has meetings across Mesa, and hers is in the shop." I didn't answer right away. I set my phone down carefully, the way you do when you're bracing yourself. "No," I said. The word landed softly, but it carried more weight than anything I'd said in years. Evelyn's mouth tightened. "Excuse me?" I said no, I repeated, calm. "It's my car. I need it. And I'm not handing over my credit card either." Bianca appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, lips already curved into that familiar smirk. "Don't be dramatic, Lucas. You work from home half the time. You can Uber." I looked at her then, really looked. Perfect hair, flawless nails, entitlement stitched into every gesture. She hadn't worked a full year in her life, yet spoke like the world owed her convenience. "I pay for that car," I said. "I pay the insurance. I pay the card. I've given enough." The room went still. Evelyn's voice rose, sharp and cutting. "After everything I've done for you, you dare say no to your sister?" "Half-sister," I almost corrected. But I didn't. Labels didn't matter to her. Only hierarchy did. "She's not asking for charity," Evelyn continued. "She's building her future. A good son knows when to step aside." I felt the leather wallet in my pocket, the one my father had given me years ago. Inside, etched so deeply the letters had worn smooth, were the words he'd told me the night he first trusted me with the market keys. "You are enough. I'm done stepping aside," I said quietly. That was when Evelyn lost control. Her hand tightened around the pot handle. For a split second, I thought she was going to slam it down on the stove. Instead, she swung. The soup hit my face and shoulder in a violent arc. Heat exploded across my skin. I heard the pot clatter to the floor, felt liquid soak into my shirt, smelled basil and salt, and something burned that I realized, distantly, was me. Bianca gasped, not in concern, but shocked that the moment had gone that far. "Give her everything or get out!" Evelyn screamed. "I won't have your selfishness in my house." I didn't scream back. I turned to the sink, shoved my face under cold water, teeth clenched as pain screamed across my nerves. When I looked up, my reflection was distorted by steam and redness, but my eyes were clear. I peeled off my shirt, grabbed the small bag I'd packed weeks ago without admitting to myself why, slipped the wallet into my pocket, and walked past them. Bianca watched me go, her expression unreadable, as if she couldn't decide whether she'd won or lost something important. The door closed behind me with a sound that felt final. I drove until the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, my cheek throbbing, my hand steady on the wheel. Freedom doesn't feel heroic at first. It feels raw. Exposed. Like air hitting a wound. I pulled into the Desert Crest Inn just outside Mesa, the kind of place no one notices you staying. In the bathroom mirror, the burn looked worse than it felt, angry red streaks across my cheek and neck. I took a photo, not for sympathy, not yet, but to remember the moment I stopped pretending. My phone buzzed. An email notification. From Nathan Cole. The subject line read, "Your father's papers." I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding now for a different reason, and opened it. "Lucas," the email began. "The documents you asked about are ready. You should come by today." There are things you were never meant to see alone. I stared at the screen for a long time. They thought they'd stripped me of everything that morning. My place. My comfort. My role. What they didn't know, what they were about to learn, was that they'd just pushed me into the one position I'd avoided my whole life. The position where I finally stopped protecting their version of the truth. And once the truth started moving, it wasn't going to stop quietly. I didn't sleep that night. The desert Creston hummed with the sound of passing trucks and an old ice machine coughing somewhere down the hall. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt heat on my skin again, not just from the soup, but from years of swallowed anger finally finding air. At dawn, I showered carefully, wincing as water traced the burn. I wrapped a towel around my shoulders and stood in the fogged mirror, staring at the version of myself I'd spent years shrinking. My father's wallet sat on the sink. I opened it and ran my thumb over the words again. You are enough. For the first time, I believed him. Nathan Cole's office sat in a low-glass building on the edge of Phoenix, tucked between a dental clinic and a tax service. The kind of place designed to disappear unless you were looking for it. I parked, sat in the car for a moment, and breathed. This wasn't just about a fight in a kitchen anymore. Nathan met me at the door himself. He was older than I remembered, hair more silver than brown now, but his eyes sharpened the moment they landed on my face. What happened? He asked. I said no, I replied. He didn't ask for more. Inside his office, the blinds were half-drawn, sunlight slicing across a long table covered in folders. My name stared back at me from more labels than I expected. You should have been brought in years ago, Nathan said, closing the door. Your father tried. Repeatedly. He slid one folder toward me. Inside was my father's will. I'd seen versions of it before, or at least, what Evelyn had told me was the will. This wasn't that. This, Nathan said, tapping the page, is the original. Filed, notarized, sealed. You are the sole owner of Reed and Stone Market. My chest tightened. What about my mother? She was named temporary administrator only if you declined or were incapacitated. Neither happened. I flipped pages, my pulse loud in my ears. There's more, Nathan said quietly. He opened another folder. Documents spilled out, bank transfers, ownership assignments, grant applications. This is forged, he continued. Your signature appears on multiple documents transferring operational control away from you. Dates align with your father's hospitalization and his funeral. My stomach dropped. They did this while I was barely standing, I whispered. Nathan nodded. That's usually when it happens. He pulled out a final envelope, thinner than the rest. Your father left this with instructions. If you ever walked out of that house, I was to give it to you. Inside was a letter in my father's handwriting. Steady. Familiar. Lucas, if you're reading this, it means I was right to worry. Protect what you built. Don't confuse obedience with love. I trust you. My vision blurred. They intercepted mail, Nathan said gently. We can prove it. I leaned back, suddenly exhausted. So what happens now? Nathan's gaze hardened. Now we document everything. And we don't do it quietly. By the time I left his office, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls. Texts. From Evelyn. From Bianca. I didn't answer. I drove back toward Mesa, stopping once to eat, barely tasting anything. Somewhere between the freeway exits and the city sprawl, something in me shifted. I wasn't running anymore. I was repositioning. At the motel, I spread everything across the bed, documents, photos, timestamps. I worked methodically, the way I always had when the market inventory didn't add up. Patterns emerged quickly. Money rerouted. My name used like a key. Bianca claiming credit for programs I'd designed, interviews I'd never given. A knock came at the door. I froze. Lucas, a voice said softly. It's Mira. I opened the door a crack. Mira Lawson stood there, eyes flicking to my cheek. Oh my God, she breathed. I was hoping the rumor was exaggerated. What rumor? That you finally said no. I let her in. Mira had worked under me at the market years ago, sharp and observant. She handed me a flash drive. They tried to clean the server last week, she said. They missed this. On the drive were emails. Audio snippets. Drafts of announcements removing my name entirely. One line stuck out, sent from Evelyn to Bianca. Once Lucas is out of the picture, no one will question the transition. I closed my eyes. They planned this, I said. Mira nodded. For a long time. That evening, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I answered. Lucas, Evelyn said coldly. Come home. We can talk like adults. I smiled for the first time in days. No, I said. I've given enough. She inhaled sharply. You think you can embarrass us and walk away? I think you already did that yourselves. I hung up. 2 hours later, Nathan texted. HOA meeting scheduled tomorrow. Public forum. Perfect timing. I stared at the message. They wanted silence. I'd spent my life giving it to them. Tomorrow, they'd get something else. And once it started, there would be no putting it back in the pot. The Canyon Ridge Community Hall was already half full when I arrived. Plastic chairs scraped against the floor, voices layered into that familiar low hum of suburban importance. People who liked to feel informed without being involved. People who believed neighborhood meetings were harmless, dull things, until they weren't. I took a seat near the back, my burn hidden beneath a light scarf. Nathan sat 2 chairs to my right, calm, unreadable. Mira was a few rows ahead, laptop balanced on her knees, fingers ready. At the front of the room, a banner hung crookedly on the wall. Canyon Ridge Community Development Update. And beneath it, in bold letters I'd once chosen myself. Reed and Stone Market, a neighborhood success story. Bianca stood at the podium. She wore cream-colored slacks and a blazer that screamed confidence borrowed from someone else. Her hair was perfect. Her smile practiced. On the projector behind her glowed slides I recognized instantly, my layouts, my language, my timelines. Reed and Stone Market has always been about community, Bianca said smoothly. Since I stepped in to lead operations. That was my cue. I stood. The chair beneath me screeched louder than it should have. Heads turned. Whispers rippled. Bianca faltered for half a second, then recovered. Sir, if you'll hold questions until. I won't, I said, my voice steady, amplified by the room's sudden stillness. Nathan rose beside me. I'm Lucas Reed, I continued. Founder and sole legal owner of Reed and Stone Market. A murmur spread. Someone near the front gasped softly. Bianca laughed lightly. That's not accurate. Nathan stepped forward. Actually, it is. He placed a folder on the table, opening it slowly, deliberately. Documents slid out, tax filings, vendor contracts, bank statements. These, Nathan said, show operational control maintained by Mr. Reed continuously since 2017. Bianca's smile tightened. That's not what our records show, she said. Of course not, Nathan replied. Your records were altered. Mira tapped a key. The projector flickered. Emails filled the screen. Dates. Times. Names. A message from Evelyn to Bianca glowed clearly. We remove Lucas quietly. He's too emotional to fight back. The room went silent. Bianca turned pale. This is private correspondence. So was my life, I said. Someone in the front row stood. I remember Lucas, an older woman said. He used to open the store before sunrise. He helped my husband set up payment plans when money was tight. Another voice chimed in. He trained half the staff himself. Bianca's hands shook as she gripped the podium. Evelyn rose from her seat near the aisle, fury radiating off her like heat. This is a personal family matter, she snapped. My son is unstable. He's always been. I lifted my scarf. The burn was visible now. Angry. Impossible to ignore. The room inhaled as one. She threw boiling soup at me, I said calmly. Because I said no. Evelyn froze. Nathan spoke again. We've documented the injury. Along with forged signatures, misdirected funds, and identity misuse. A man near the back whispered, Jesus. Bianca backed away from the podium. The chairperson cleared her throat. We'll need to pause this presentation. No, I said gently. You don't. I stepped forward, placing my father's old ledger on the table. Yellowed pages. His handwriting unmistakable. He built this market for me, I said. Not as a gift. As a responsibility. I looked directly at Bianca. You didn't inherit leadership. You borrowed my name and hoped no one would notice when you erased it. Silence pressed down hard. Evelyn's voice cracked. You're humiliating us. No, I replied. I'm telling the truth. Nathan slid one final document forward. Notice of reversion. Filed this morning. Effective immediately, all operational authority returns to Lucas Reed. The chairperson read it twice, then nodded slowly. This meeting is adjourned. People stood in clusters, murmuring. Phones came out. Photos were taken. Bianca fled the room. Evelyn didn't look at me as she left. Outside, the Arizona sun felt harsher than before. Nathan exhaled slowly. That was step 1, he said. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Bianca. You think this is over? I typed back 3 words. It's just begun. That night, my inbox flooded. Vendors. Employees. Customers. Stories poured in, missed pay, pressure to credit Bianca publicly, instructions to stop mentioning my name. I cataloged everything. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. Lucas, a man said calmly. This is Daniel Whitaker. Mediator. I closed my eyes. They want to settle, he continued. Quietly. I smiled. No, I said. They've had enough quiet. I hung up. Across town, they were scrambling. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to stop the collapse. I was watching it unfold, slowly, inevitably, knowing the house they'd built on lies was already empty inside. By morning, the city felt different, not louder, not brighter, just more aware. Like something had shifted beneath the pavement and everyone could sense it, even if they didn't know why. My phone hadn't stopped vibrating since midnight. I hadn't answered a single call. Instead, I sat at the small desk in the Desert Crest Inn, coffee gone cold beside me, documents spread out in careful rows. Years of my life reduced to paper and pixels. Proof stacked so high it was almost absurd that anyone had thought I'd stay buried under silence forever. At 8:17 a.m., Nathan arrived. He didn't knock. He texted once, "I'm outside," and I let him in. "They're panicking," he said, shrugging off his jacket. That meeting spooked more people than they expected. "Good," I replied. "It was supposed to." Nathan set his briefcase down and pulled out a yellow legal pad already covered in notes. "Mediation is officially requested. They want to meet tonight. Neutral ground." "Neutral," I repeated, amused. "There's no such thing." He gave a thin smile. "True. But there are rooms with rules." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "Where?" "The Copper Lantern." That figured. The Copper Lantern was where Evelyn hosted every celebration worth documenting. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Bianca's promotions. A place designed to make power feel elegant. "Tonight," Nathan added. 7. I nodded once. "I'll be there." The hours crawled. I drove across Mesa with the windows down, desert air hot and dry against my skin. I stopped at a clinic to have the burn examined. The nurse sucked in her breath when she saw it, then softened when I told her how it happened. "She your mother?" she asked quietly. "Yes." She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. By late afternoon, Mira called. "They're scrubbing social media," she said. "Deleting posts. Locking accounts. Bianca's pretending the meeting never happened." "Let them," I replied. "Screenshots live forever." I hung up and sat in my car outside the motel for a long time, wallet in my hand, thumb tracing the words inside. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast. What I felt now was colder. Sharper. Resolve. At 6:58 p.m., I walked into the Copper Lantern. The place smelled like citrus polish and expensive wine. Soft music floated through the room, carefully chosen not to intrude. Evelyn was already there, seated at the long table near the window, posture rigid, hands folded like she was waiting for a verdict. Bianca sat beside her, eyes darting, jaw clenched. She didn't look confident tonight. She looked cornered. Daniel Whitaker, the mediator, stood when he saw me. Neutral smile. Neutral suit. Neutral tone. "Thank you for coming, Lucas." Nathan took the seat beside me without a word. We didn't order drinks. Daniel cleared his throat. "The goal tonight is resolution. Not blame." Evelyn scoffed. "He's the one humiliating this family." I met her gaze. "You did that yourself." She turned away, lips pressed thin. Daniel raised a hand gently. "Let's keep this productive." Nathan slid a folder across the table. "These are our terms." Bianca laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Terms? You think you have leverage?" Nathan didn't respond. He opened the folder instead. Out came the documents, again, but now arranged with ruthless precision. Forged transfer agreements. Bank statements. Email threads. Server logs. Grant applications submitted under my name without consent. Then, calmly, he placed the medical report on top. "Assault," Nathan said plainly. Bianca's face drained of color. Evelyn shot to her feet. "That was an accident." "No," I said. "It wasn't." The room fell quiet. Daniel swallowed. Let's slow down." "There's no need," Nathan replied. "Everything is documented." He leaned forward. "Full ownership of Reed and Stone Market reverts to Lucas immediately. All fraudulent filings are withdrawn. Public statements are issued correcting authorship and leadership. And you vacate the Clearview Hills property within 30 days. Bianca slammed her hand on the table. "That house is ours." I finally spoke again. "No, it isn't." I pulled out the final document, the one Nathan had shown me that morning. My father's addendum. "The house," I continued, voice steady, "was placed in a conditional trust. My share triggers partition when fraud is proven." Daniel's eyes widened slightly as he read. "This is valid." Evelyn's knees buckled back into her chair. "You planned this," she whispered, looking at me like she was seeing a stranger. "No," I said. "My father did." Bianca's voice cracked. You're destroying us. I tilted my head. No. I'm stepping away. You're just finally feeling the weight of what you built. Silence stretched. Outside, traffic moved on. Glasses clinked at another table. Life didn't pause for family drama. Daniel folded his hands. If you refuse these terms, litigation begins tomorrow. Evelyn looked at Bianca. Bianca looked at the table. Minutes passed. Then Evelyn whispered, sign. Bianca's hands shook as she picked up the pen. Each signature landed like a door closing. When it was done, Nathan collected the papers and stood. We'll file tonight. I rose with him. Evelyn's voice followed me. Lucas. I stopped, but didn't turn. I was protecting her, she said. I thought you were strong enough to survive without love? I finished quietly. She didn't answer. I walked out. 3 days later, they returned to the house in Clearview Hills. I wasn't there to see it, but Nathan described it later in precise, almost clinical detail. The rooms were bare. No photos. No furniture I'd bought. No records. Even the kitchen shelves were empty. Waiting for them was a man in a gray suit. He handed them the notice. The house was being listed. Their silence, finally, had somewhere to live. That night, I drove to my new apartment in downtown Tempe. It was small. Simple. Mine. I placed the wallet on the nightstand, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the quiet settle. For the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. And space, I was learning, is where rebuilding begins. The weeks that followed felt unreal, like living inside a room after the furniture has been cleared out, echoes everywhere, but finally enough space to breathe. I didn't go back to Clearview Hills. I didn't need to. Nathan handled everything with quiet efficiency. Utility transfers. Asset freezes. Title changes. The kind of invisible work that doesn't make headlines but redraws lives. Every few days he'd send a short update, filed. Approved. Closed. Each word felt like a knot loosening somewhere deep in my chest. I focused on healing. The burn on my cheek faded from angry red to pale pink. A scar remained, thin and uneven, just visible when the light hit it right. The doctor called it superficial. I didn't correct her. Some injuries aren't measured by depth. I started sleeping through the night again. Not perfectly, memories still crept in, but without that sharp jolt of dread that used to snap me awake at 3 in the morning. I woke up to sunlight instead of anxiety, to quiet instead of accusation. The market reopened under my full control the following Monday. No announcement. No ribbon. Just the doors unlocked at 6 a.m., the same way they'd always been when my father was alive. I stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, hands busy, heart steady. People noticed. Old customers paused when they saw me, surprise flickering across their faces before softening into something warmer. You're back, one woman said, smiling. I never left, I replied. Word spread fast, not gossip this time, but truth. Vendors called to confirm contracts. Local growers stopped by with crates and handshakes. Someone taped a handwritten note near the register, glad you're still here. I left it up. Bianca tried once more. She sent an email, long, carefully worded, full of phrases like family misunderstanding and overreaction. She asked if we could reset privately. I didn't respond. Evelyn didn't reach out again. But I heard things. Friends of friends talk. Whispers at fundraisers. Invitations quietly rescinded. The kind of consequences no one posts about. The house sold faster than expected. Apparently, a place loses some shine when its story leaks into the walls. I took my share and didn't look back. With the money, I paid off the market's remaining debts, upgraded equipment my father had always meant to replace, and set aside a modest fund in his name for community food programs. Nothing flashy. Just useful. The rest stayed untouched. One evening, Mira came by the apartment with takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. You look different, she said, handing me a container. Lighter. I feel quieter, I said. She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. We ate on the floor, laughing about nothing important, the city humming through the open window. At some point, she glanced at the scar on my cheek. Do you regret it? She asked gently. No, I said without hesitation. I regret staying silent for so long. That was the truth. Silence had never protected me. It had only made me easier to erase. Months passed. Life settled into a rhythm that felt earned. Morning routines. Honest work. Evenings that belonged to me. I started writing again, not for anyone else, just to untangle thoughts that had been knotted for years. One entry kept repeating itself in different words until I finally wrote it plainly. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was refusal. Refusal to be reduced. Refusal to be owned. Refusal to bleed quietly. I ran into Evelyn once, unexpectedly, at a grocery store on the south side of town. She looked smaller somehow. Not older, just diminished. We locked eyes for a brief moment. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I gave her a polite nod and continued down the aisle. That was it. No confrontation. No closure speech. Just distance. And distance, I'd learned, can be mercy. The scar faded further, but I never tried to hide it. It reminded me of the exact moment my life split into before and after. A line drawn not by anger, but by choice. On the anniversary of my father's death, I closed the market early and walked down to the river. I sat on a bench, the leather wallet heavy in my pocket, and finally allowed myself to miss him without bitterness. You were right, I said aloud. I am enough. The water didn't answer, but it didn't need to. I stood up, feeling something settle into place. Not triumph. Not victory. Peace. The kind that comes when nothing is left to prove. If you've made it this far, thank you, for listening, for staying, for giving this story a place to land. If any part of it felt familiar, if you've ever been pushed to the edge for saying no, know this, walking away doesn't mean you lost. Sometimes it means you finally stopped losing. If you want to support stories like this, honest, uncomfortable, real, consider subscribing and sharing where you're watching from in the comments. Every voice reminds me these stories don't disappear into silence. And if you're standing at your own breaking point, remember this. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You owe yourself the truth. That was the day I walked away. And it was the day everything finally began. If this story stayed with you, don't let it end in silence. Subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach others who may be standing at the same breaking point, quietly deciding whether to walk away or finally choose themselves.